Okay, good morning. Today we start Menachos. Um, so I thought that we would start with just an overview of what a mincha is. A mincha is a flower offering. Um, and let's see if I can find Safari in here. So Torah first addresses this in um, seconds. Okay. Can you see my screen? Trying to share it here. Just a sec. Mm, share screen. Start broadcast. There we go. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. Um, and this is Vayikra, second chapter of Vayikra. V'nefesh ki takriv korban mincha l'Hashem. If a person wants to sacrifice a flour offering to God, solas hiya korbano. You have to use fine flour. V'yatzakal le'Hashem, and then you sprinkle oil onto it. V'nasan le'levana, and you use a frankincense. V'avial b'nei on the name. You bring it to the priests. So the priest takes a fistful, misalta, umishamna al kolavanasa, from the flour and the oil and all of the frankincense. Victor coin sauce crossamiz. You take this small part that's removed to the altar. It's burned as a pleasing aroma to God. What's the leftover? Or you only took one fistful of flour, so the rest of the flour goes liaron ulvanav, goes to the kohanim. Kodesh kodashim me'esh Hashem. It's sanctified, and then it goes on to describe. There are three different types of a mincha, a flour offering. One is baked, and one is fried on a griddle, and another is deep fried in a pan. Okay, so um, yeah. All right. So now we will begin the Gemara. If I can find it. Okay. So the Gemara, as typically, it doesn't start off by telling you what a mincha is, what we've just looked at in the Chumash. Well, what it tells you is it starts talking about it has to be like an animal carve. It has to be lishma. It has to be for its own, for the proper, with the proper intentions. So the Mishnah says if you do a mincha not for its own, not for the right purpose, in other words, as we'll see, he intends to do a different mincha than this one is. And again, we'll see it could be for a different person, with the intent for a different person, or for a different type of mincha. Sheros, so it is a valid offering. But if someone is bringing this mincha because he made an error that he's going to bring a mincha, and this mincha was done shalom lishma, so it's a valid mincha, but it doesn't count. Like the owner still has the obligation to bring a mincha that's done specifically for him. So the exception is there's two types of minchas that are unusual. One is one can be brought as a chatos, like someone who does a sin and has to atone for it, and the other is the sota, right? The ritual of a woman who's suspected of being unfaithful, and so there's this whole ritual which includes a mincha to kind of test her. So what's the rule for those? If you do those not for the right purpose, So, for example, or you put it in the klisharis, you in the right vessel of v'halach v'hiktir shlolishman, and then you did the haktara, the putting it on the fire, did that shlolishma. Ol lishman v'shlo lishman, or shlo lishman v'lishman, or if you have kind of the dual purpose in mind, you have it's a little hard to understand exactly what's going through the guy's head, but the Mishnah will elaborate in a minute. But if you do it both lishma and lo lishma, then in the case of minchas chote, minchas knos, that's not even a valid korban at all. Case of lishma for lishma, the Mishnah explains what do I mean by saying it's for dual purpose, for lishma and not lishma. L'shem minchas chote u l'shem minchas nadava. Um, if he has two intentions, he takes the handful of flour and he's thinking both for the mincha that it's intended for, and he also has the intention of a voluntary mincha. Shalom lishman v'lishman. And what does it mean? The Mishnah has said both lishman, the shalol lishman, and shalol lishman, lishman, l'shem minchas nadava, l'shem minchas chote. So it seems to be saying like it doesn't matter what the order is. Like you might think first while you are scooping it out, you think of one thing, and then you start thinking of another thing. Not that they're simultaneous. Okay.
Can
The
the
Gemara
mincha
says,
take the place of a korban, or is it because we talk about a chatat here? We were talking earlier, learning about a chatat, a korban, bringing an animal. So, or
mhm.
is this in addition to a korban, or only certain things that allow a mincha? How about a korban, yolev, a yorek?
Every remember think of Musaf for any holiday, any animal carbon comes with a mincha.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So,
So I wasn't clear about that. Yeah, you're correct. So what's the question?
so that's what I was thinking, that everything has a mincha, but it seems, I mean, maybe this is just the surface here. It seems as if there's a mincha, for instance, the mincha of a sota, is that just a mincha, or is there also a korban with that, or
Oh,
some other
so
things?
okay.
Is there sometimes a mincha comes by itself?
Yes. So two questions. So with the sota, it is part of a whole ritual.
Right,
there is no other carbon in the case of a sota, but there is a whole procedure of which the
right.
mincha is part of it. And as far as your question of a voluntary mincha, yes, you can certainly bring a neder or a nadava, and we will deal with all those as well.
So there could be with a
It
korban, or
could
it
be
could be without
independent
the
of
korban.
exactly. That's right. Okay, so the Gemara asks, "Lama leila Mishnah Ella." So in the language of the Mishnah was, it's kosher, but it's a good carbon. Ella, but it doesn't fulfill the owner's obligation. It could leave out the word but. Um, so the Gemara answers, at least they below you just leave out the word but. Gemara answers, Hakamashma, what it tells you is Labalim hutlo l'shem chava hamincha gufe kshera v'azer l'shanuye. So what it's telling you is that it remains a valid mincha. I mean, we know that already, right? But not only that, it remains a valid mincha in the sense that you have to continue doing the proper avoda. You have to continue doing it lishma, even though you've already messed it up. That's what's implied by the word Ella.
What does that mean? If you continue to do it, even though you made a
Oh,
mistake?
so you did the scooping, shalol lishma. Now it's still a valid korban, so you have to mix it with the oil and the frankincense and take it and burn it on the mizbeach. So all of those things, even though you messed up by doing it shalol lishma at the beginning, you have to continue doing the procedure, and you're supposed to do it lishma as you would have if you hadn't messed it up.
So that's intention. But suppose he dropped
Yes.
half of it. Does he
Oh, okay.
continue? Or suppose he lost it, or
Oh,
he mixed it, or a sheretz fell in, or got dirty, or whatever it might be. His hands weren't clean. So
totally
that's
separate
he
question.
messes up.
Totally separate question. I
Okay.
assume maybe the Gemara will deal with that. We have a whole long Masechta in front of us. I don't know, but it seems likely that the Gemara will deal with those questions as well in due course.
Uh-huh.
Um, Rava, and this is supported by Rava. The Amar Rava, Rava said, "Ola sheshchata shmo lishma," dealing with an animal carbon, and Ola. If you did the shchita, lo lishma, asur lizrok dam shlo lishma, you have to continue the procedure and do these Rikas Adon Lishma properly. Um, and how do I know this? Ibai Sema Svar, Ibai Sema Kra. It might be logical or it might be from the Pasuk. Ibai Sema Svar, what would the logic be? Mishum de Mishane Ba, Kol Hani Lishne Ba Venezel. Like, um, the logic is like, so you made a mistake in part one. So that means you can now make a mistake in part two. I could challenge that logic, but the Gemara is saying it's like there's no real reason to think that you can now have a free hand to continue doing it lo lishma. If you buy Samakra, or you could say it's from a pasuk. Mosas Sasecha Tishmar V'Yasisa. This is in Devarim. You should whatever you say with your mouth, you should keep and do kasher nadarta l'Hashem l'kecha nedava, like you made just as you made a neder to Hashem as a voluntary offering. You should fulfill what you've said. Now, what the Gemara is pointing out is technically, the word neder is different than nedava. One is when you're giving a neder of a specific thing, and the other when you say, "I'm going to donate this chair," to the or this bag of flour is going to be my korban, and the other is nedava where you say a bag. I'm going to bring a bag of flour, a mincha. Um, so why is why is Nadava Netherhu? Like, why is the Torah mixing the words Nether and Nadava? They're technically two different things. Karla Nether, Karla Nadava. Like, why is it calling this both by using both words? Ella im kamash and Nadarta Zisa yehi Nether bim lav yehi Nadava. What it's telling you is, if you did it properly, then it counts for you, and if not, then it's a Nadava. So, which the Gemara takes as indicating that you still have to do it properly. It's also not 100% clear to me like how this proves anything. Um, but the Gemara continues in the Dava Mishar Lishanesba. If you're considering it a Nadava, then it has to follow the rules. Now again, it's not entirely clear to me why this indicates that once you've messed it up, it's not completely messed up. But what the Gemara is saying in both approaches, is that even though you've messed it up, but it's still a kosher korban, and so you have to follow the regular korban rules and do it lishma for the rest of the procedure. Okay, so Lema
So
was
it is a regular korban. It's accepted then.
it is accepted. However, it doesn't count for your obligation, as the Mishnah said. Right, so you still have to, this is a valid korban, but you still have to, it's a voluntary korban. You still have to bring another one, the one that you promised to bring, or the one that you're obligated to bring.
Didn't we learn in the previous Masechta that the most important thing was sprinkling the blood? If you made mistakes with the other ones, sprinkle the blood. Or if you didn't do the blood correctly, it doesn't count, for instance. That was the ikar, right?
Yeah, but of course, with the mincha, there's no blood.
Right, I understand that, but
Yeah.
he mentions this as an example as Ola sheshachata shelo lishma asur lizrok dama shelo lishma. But the blood is the ikar. Sprinkling the blood is the ikar, right? So I'm not puzzled by this, because I thought we learned that if other things weren't done correctly, you could sprinkle the blood, or as long as you sprinkled the blood correctly, the korban could be accepted. But if you did other things wrong, well, no, wait a second. If you did everything else right, but sprinkled the blood incorrectly, it was not accepted. Isn't that what we learned? Am I remember that correctly?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So it would seem, why would it be asur l'zrok damam shelo lishma if it just made the mistake earlier?
No, no. What it's saying is, it's not saying you can't sprinkle the blood. It's saying you have to sprinkle the blood, but you have to do it lishma. It's forbidden to do it lo lishma.
Uh-huh.
In other words, you have to continue doing it properly, and then it will still be a valid korban.
It would be a valid korban.
If you can, yeah, valid korban, but it wouldn't count as your obligation. Same like the mincha that we're saying here, that if you messed up the lishma shelo lishma, you have to continue the procedure. It's a valid mincha. It's just not the mincha that you promised to bring because it wasn't done for you.
So with the korban, then one could eat it, right? Unless
Yes,
it's nola.
if it's a shlamim, yeah, you could eat it.
You can eat it. It's like a barbecue. You can, but it's not. It's that he doesn't receive kapara for it.
right, or credit if it's in
or
the
credit,
Dhamma.
whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Layman was nisan to Rabbi Shimon. So Gemara continues. Now I'm going to say that our Mishnah is not in accordance with Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya. Rabbi Shimon Amar. Rabbi Shimon says, "Kol menachos nikmitzu shelo lishman kasheros ve'alul balim l'shem chava." Rabbi Shimon says, not only is a mincha that they took the flour lo lishma, not only is it still a valid mincha, it even still counts for the owner as his obligation. And that's exactly opposite to what the Mishnah says. And he continues, She'ein hamanachos damos l'zvachim, because a mincha is not the same as an animal carbon. She'akomitz machvas l'shum marcheshes, masel mochichin l'shum machvas. The difference between a mincha and an animal carbon is, as I mentioned briefly, there's three different types of mincha, and they're prepared differently. You have the one that's in the oven, you have the one that's in the griddle, and the one that's made on the pot, in a frying pan. Whereas with an animal carbon, there's shchita and there's zrika, right? The avoda is the same in each case. You can't tell by looking at what's going on by the shchita what it's for, as opposed to a mincha. If you watch the procedure, you say, "Oh, he's using a frying pan. It's a fry pan mincha. He's using a griddle. It's a griddle mincha." Um, so, She'ena minchas domas l'zvachim. So Rabbi Shimon says this is why it makes a difference, because the procedure is different. She'akomitz machvas l'shum marchashes, ma'aseh mochis l'shum machvas. Now he's taking the approach that what is lishma v'shelo lishma. So I've been assuming. Well, I mentioned earlier that there's two types, but I've been talking mostly about done for one person as opposed to the other person. But the other kind of lo lishma is when I take the flour, I'm thinking this is going to be a griddle mincha, but really it's supposed to be a fry pan mincha. That's also shelo lishma, right? But if the observer sees me putting it in a frying pan, then it shows that even though the Kohen may have thought about the griddle by putting it in the frying pan, he's kind of revealing that it's a fry pan mincha. Okay, and chareva l'shum blula maseh mochichin l'shum chareva. And also, if it's there's also mincha chareva this is a mincha schote, which there's no oil in it, so it's just dry flour. But if you then mix it with oil, then you're revealing that, it doesn't matter that I was thinking about a dry mincha, because I actually went and did an oil, mixed with oil mincha. Aval bezvachim enukein, but you don't have a similar situation with animal korbanos. Shchita achas l'kulan, zrika achas l'kulan, v'kabal achas l'kulan. The procedure is exactly the same, regardless of what your intention is. I mean, that's why the intention is more significant for a zevach, for an animal korban, because there's no other way to know, what kind of korban this is, as opposed to a mincha. Okay.
So how do we know in the case of the marcheshet or the case of the whatever, the grid or whatever it might be, the machvat? How do we know what the
Mhm.
Kohen is thinking? He puts it in there. You see what he's doing. You say, okay, it must be the griddle
Yeah.
or
So we have
frying
to we
pan.
have to we have to rely on the Kohen, I guess, or if he says something verbally, perhaps, to his neighbor. But I guess that we're assuming the Kohen is scrupulous, and he may have erred, but he's not going to cover it up. Okay. Uh, Hanichal Ravashi. Now, this is so. So we can now. So we've demonstrated that Rabbi Shimon is different than our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says it doesn't count for you, and Rabbi Shimon says it does count for you. For a mincha, it's different than zavach. Now, Hanichal Ravashi. We can reconcile the Mishnah and Rabbi Shimon according to Ravashi. Diamar, because Ravashi says, "Kan bekomitz machvas l'shum marchashes, kan bekomitz minchas machvas l'shum minchas marchashes." There's a difference, according to Ravashi, between what kind of wrong intention are you having. Um, um, in one case, the it seems semantic to me. Okay, but if the lo lishma is you're taking a handful of flour for the fry pan when it's supposed to be for the griddle. That's not as bad as thinking I'm taking this handful for a mincha of a fry pan. Okay, so if your intention specifies a mincha, well, that's a bad lolishma. Then like the mincha is disqualified from that person. But if you're just thinking, oh, this flour I'm going to put in the frying pan, and I was supposed to think I'm putting it on the griddle, that's not as bad.
What
Um,
was the first case? You said you're taking it for a mincha instead of a mincha?
if you're taking it for a mincha for a fry pan. So like I don't know whether the coin's in the base of mikdash, right? He's he's using the clay kodesh. So I'm not sure I really get like what is the distinction between intention to put it in the fry pan or intention to make a fry pan mincha. They seem pretty similar, but Ravashi makes that distinction. Ravashi says, if you're just thinking, I'm going to put this in the fry pan, then that's not so bad. That doesn't disqualify the mincha from counting for me. It's only if you say, I'm going to make this a fry pan mincha. That's the improper intention that counts. So
So what would
masnisim,
be the alternative in the first case? That he says, I'm just going to put this mincha in the fry pan. What would be, as opposed to what? What would
oh
be
yeah, so it's supposed to be
initially
for a
wrong
griddle
intention there?
because it's a griddle mincha, right? There's these different types of minchas,
No, I
and what I'm
understand that.
saying,
That's the
yeah.
second one. If he intends to put, he thinks that's going to be a mincha for the fry pan versus the marcheshet, whatever. But
Mhm,
what the first point you raised, I'm not sure I understand it. He says,
mhm.
this is a mincha, I'm going to put it in the fry pan. So what would be the other alternative? What would the thinking be? That it would be
because
Lolishma or
because
this?
when the owner brings it to the mikdash, it's for specific either for the griddle or the fry pan. If he brings one for that's if he's made a neder that he's going to bring a griddle mincha, and then the Kohen treats it like a fry pan mincha, that's a problem. But it's only a problem if he treats it like a fry pan mincha, according to Ravashi. If the Kohen only thinks this flour is headed for the fry pan and it's a griddle mincha, he hasn't messed it up yet because he hasn't thought that he hasn't had the intention for a fry pan mincha. So the distinction is pretty fine, but that's why it's only Ravashi who thinks that and not anybody else.
So he's thinking that this is a mincha. I'm going to put it in the fry pan, but he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, yeah. The actual action, uh, as we've said before, you have to continue, even though you did have a low lishma, you have to continue doing the proper procedure. So he then realizes that, oh, this is a griddle mincha, and he does it on the griddle. So that part is okay. The only question is, how badly did he mess it up by thinking about the fry pan while he was taking the flour?
I mean, you have to examine his thoughts then. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, you got to go
Right. So
ask
that's
him,
what you
what were
asked
you thinking
before.
before you actually put it
That's what
in
you
a
asked
fry pan?
before. Yeah. So either possibly he was talking to his friend about it, to his neighbor, and maybe he verbalized it, or he's just being scrupulous and saying, you know what, I was thinking the wrong thing. So yes, we do have to rely on most likely on the Cohen self-reporting, because otherwise, how would you know? Anyway, so the Gemara just wraps this up. Masnisi mincha l'shum minchahi. So the Mishnah is talking about when the Kohen's improper thought is, I'm going to bring this as a fry pan mincha. Um, but El Rabba Rava, Rabba and Rava, who did not take this approach of Ravashi, but they had their different ways of resolving the Mishnah. How are you going to explain? Um, how are you going to explain what? Rabbi Shimon. Yeah. That doesn't Rabbi Shimon contradict the Mishnah? Um, maybe Lancer could Mishane Rabba, like Rabba answers, Kan B'Shinu Kodesh, Kan B'Shinu Balim. Maybe just like we talked about the Mincha, there's different kinds of Lom Shua. Maybe with you could answer it like this. You could say, where Rabbi Shimon says that it is Ol L'Shem Balim, that they do get credit for it. We're talking about that's a change of B'Shinu Kodesh, meaning the change of the type of offering. But where Rabbi Shimon says that it doesn't fulfill the obligation, like in our Mishnah, which says it doesn't fulfill the obligation, we're talking about Shinui Balim. That, when I'm thinking about about me and not you, about about Reuven and not about Shimon as the owner, that is a disqualifying thing. So maybe you'll answer that. So Hamas Nisin Shinu Kodeshu. No, our Mishnah is clearly talking about different types. We're not talking. The Balim never entered into the discussion of our Mishnah. It was really just talking about Shinui Kodesh, the different types of mincha. Diktane Ketzin Lishma Lishma, as the Mishnah explained. What do I mean by the Mishnah said, what do I mean by lishma v'shalol lishma when it talks about mixed intentions? L'shum minchas chote, l'shum minchas nedava. So the Mishnah reveals that the type of lo lishma it's talking about is the type of mincha it is. V'name kedukam shani rava, and or you could say that it's that Rava's answer was kan b'kamas mincha l'shum mincha, kan b'kamas mincha l'shum zevach. Maybe the distinction is it an independent, are you thinking about an independent mincha or about a mincha that comes along with an animal korban? No, you can't say that about our Mishnah because our Mishnah is definitely talking only about the mincha that comes as a mincha, independent mincha. Or sorry, when you're yeah, diktane, because as the Mishnah says, shlo lishman b'lishman, l'shem minchas nadav, l'shem minchas chote. So we're talking about mixing the different types of mincha. El rabba v'rabba machwarta masnisim d'lo Rabbi Shimon. So you have to say that indeed, according to Rabba and Rabba, the Mishnah does not accord with Rabbi Shimon. For Rami Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Shimon, and we have this is the contradiction between Rabbi Shimon's statements. Titania Rabbi Shimon Omer Kodesh Kodeshim Hikachatas V'Chasham. The Torah says the minchas kodesh kodashim like a chatas and an asham. Yesh men kachatos v'yesh men kasham. So Rabbi Shimon interprets this that some minchas are like a chatas and some are like an asham. How so? Minchas chote are kachatos. Minchas chote is like a chatas offering, which makes sense, right? They're both for sins. Lafikach kamatza shalolishma psula. Therefore, if you do the kmitza, the fist grabbing the fistful of flour, lo lishma, then it's possible. Kachatos, then a chatos that you do shlo lishma is also, if you shachta shlo lishma, it's also possible. Minchas nadava hare kasham. The voluntary mincha is like an asham. Lafikach kamatza shlo lishma kshera. So it follows the rules of an asham that if it's done shlo lishma, then it's still kosher. Uchiyasham, ma'asham kasher ve'namaratze, but it's still a valid, and it's like the asham also in that not only it is still a kosher sacrifice, but af minchas ve'namaratze, but it doesn't count for the owner. Af minchas nedava ksher ve'namaratze. So the same you would apply to a minchas nedava. So we seem to have two. Rabbi Shimon, in our case, he says he seems to say it's always counts for the balim, and here he says no, a mincha that is a minchas chote doesn't count for the balim. Marabel kasha kamishinu
Well,
kodesh
neither does the
kamishinu
asham,
balim.
right? He just says the
No, no,
asham, the inomaretza. That neither the
uh,
chata nor the asham, right? They do not
yeah.
count.
Oh, I'm sorry, I mistake. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. The chatas is not even kosher. The asham is kosher, but it doesn't count. Yeah, sorry. Correct. Thank you for correcting me. So Amarabba, lo kasha, no problem. Kan b'shinu kodesh, kan b'shinu malim. Again, we'll make the distinction between what's the lishma. Is it about what kind of sacrifice it is, or is it about what kind of who is the owner? Amalei Abaye, Michte, Machshava, the Pasuk Rahman HaKeshahi, Bali Shini Kadosh, Bali Shini Balim. If you're going to say that the whole idea of thinking that it's lo lishma, if it comes from a pasuk, then like where in the pasuk do you see this distinction between what kind of lo lishma is it? Amalei, Basel Mochichin. You can see by as we said before, by observing what's going on, you can see what the intention or what kind of like the actions that you take, which prove what kind of a korban this is, override the lo lishma thought because you can observe how it's different in the mincha. Dekam Rabbi Shimon. So Masem Mochichin Dekam Rabbi Shimon Sfarahid. So that idea is a svara. To Rabbi Shimon Darish Talmud Dekra, because Rabbi Shimon uses logical reasoning to understand the mitzvahs. Machshava Dolaminkrah Pasal Rachmana. So logically, Rabbi Shimon says, when would the Torah say that a machshava shlo lishma is bad? That's if that's the only indication of what's going on here. Machshava deminkara, but if there is a physical act, an observable act that indicates, yes, this is a fry pan mincha or a griddle mincha, then the Torah would not make lo lishma a problem there. So okay. So now we're going to question that that whole that line of thought. Okay.
How do we
So can
resolve
you?
this issue with Reb Shimon, Kasha Reb Shimon on Reb Shimon, when we talked about the chatat and the asham, where one it would be pasul, right? The chatat is pasul and the asham is kosher below miratzeh. Wasn't there a
Yeah.
contradiction?
Right. So we could say it depends. If it's a minchas chote, then it's like a chatas. If it's a minchas nedava, then it's like an asham. Um, and that's how you could resolve the contradiction with Rabbi Shimon. So now we're going to question this idea that can the fact that you can observe that your observation can override the thought, like is that a valid statement? Almiata. So we're going to question this from a bunch of different perspectives. Olasov shemlach alamala mishum chatasov teratze. So what about you have a bird ola, you did the malika, um, and you did that above the line on the mizbeach, um, as which you would have done for a chatzasov, not an olasov, so teratze. So should that work? By doing it um, um, above the line. One second. Um, Yeah, 'cause if it were actually a chatos, then you would have done it below the line. Um, so the fact that you did it above the line should indicate that, okay, whatever I was thinking, but I did it right. So there's an observable thing that says I did it right.
But this is like
So
converting an ola to a chatat, right? And I thought that wasn't acceptable. Whereas and a chatat to an ola would be acceptable. Didn't we learn that?
yeah. So what I was saying, but if you're going to accept this idea that the observable thing overrides the lishma thought, then this shouldn't work, right? So, um, but
Should
still,
not work, right? Is that what you're saying? It should not work?
no, it should work because if it's a chatos, you would have done it below the line.
But
Okay,
now he
but the
did it
fact
above
that
the
you did
line.
it above the line, so doesn't that prove that it's a doesn't that prove that it's an ola? But we don't say that. We say that it doesn't work for the Bali, right? So we're trying to bring support or anti-support. What's the word for this idea that an observable action which proves what you're doing this for can override the lishma, right? And here it seems it's not the case because here, if you actually did it in the right place, that should override the low lishma thought, and yet we still consider this low lishma.
How's this the right place? He thought it was supposed to be an ola, right? And he does it above the line, which
Mhm.
quote unquote could make it an ola.
Yeah,
I mean, it is an ola, right?
right. So shouldn't that override the low lishma thought? And yet we say, and we don't say that. We don't say it overrides the low lishma thought. We say this is an invalid. This carbon doesn't count.
Because he
But
thought it
it
was.
should count. But according to this logic, it should count because you actually did it in the right place, right? So it's an observable phenomenon, observable action that it was done in the right place. So it should be considered correct.
Oh,
Uh,
but he thought it was going to be a chata, and he did it in the wrong place according to his thinking.
right.
But in the
Well,
right place,
no, no. I wouldn't put it quite that way. I would say that when he did it, he was doing it lowly. Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, like when he did it, I guess he was thinking lo lishma, but he was doing it correctly. So the doing it correctly should override the lo lishma thought. But we don't say that. We say it doesn't override. It is the lo lishma thought that makes it possible. So so it appears that you don't say the observable thing overrides the thought.
but what was his thought was a chatat? Is that what we're saying here? Or initially it
Yes,
was supposed to be an
yes,
ola,
that's
but his
right.
thought was a chatat, and he did it as an ola in the ola place. Is that what happened?
That's right, exactly. Right, look at the statement. Olasov, shemala kolamala, mishum chatasov. You did it above the line, but you were thinking chatas, right?
But originally it was supposed to be an ola. Isn't that what the
Yes, correct.
so what did he change his thought? I mean, he's
No.
bringing it to the Beit HaMikdash. It's an Ola. No, I'm going to do this as a Chatat. And he brings it up, puts it up there, Ola, which is what his original thought was, and he changed his thought.
Well,
I'm not sure what happened here.
when the
Because it starts
Cohen,
as Ola to Of. We're thinking that's an Ola. So
right.
then he says, no, I'm not, I didn't really want to bring it as an Ola. I want to bring it as a Chatat. And he brings it above the line, which is the place for the Ola.
Right. Well, the only thing that counts is what he's thinking when he's doing the actual avoda, right? So, it could have a label on it, a tag on it saying Ola, but that doesn't matter if you do it, at the time that you're actually doing it, you have the wrong thought
He had the wrong thought, but he did it in the right
in the
place
right
with the
way.
Ola. So,
Yes,
I
but
mean,
and yet we say it's possible. So that shows that the thought is very significant, right? It's not overridden by the action.
So,
It-
so the thought takes precedence here then.
right. And we were trying to say no, that the action takes precedence. So this proves that this seems to prove that the thought still takes precedence over the action. The Gemara answers, Atu chatasas l'mala milesa. Wait a minute. There is a type of chatas, bird chatas, which is done above the line. So if he was thinking above the line and did it above if he was thinking chatas and did it above the line, that could still be a chatas, right? There is such a chatas. Hamar malika b'chol makom b'mizbeach shera. Um, because we know that um, like b'diavad, it's okay, right? So you can have the fact that you did it lamala doesn't indicate for sure, and then people see that you continue and this is considered a valid korban. That doesn't prove that you were thinking ola, right? It could be you were thinking chatas, and yet even so, or even though you did it it could be that you were thinking chatas, you did it in the ola place, which is the wrong place for a chatas, but still it would be a valid chatas if you were doing a chatas in the wrong place.
Well, first of all, which chatat is this? That would be could
A
do it.
bird, which chatas is it? I don't know.
Well, the
Why
Gemara
you?
says that apparently it says there is such a chata. So which I mean,
No, no. What it's saying is not that there is such a chatas, but that if you could have a valid chatos that you did above the line. How would that be? You did it wrong. You were supposed to do it below the line, but you did it above the line. But still, b'di'evad, that's still a kosher chatos.
is
Not a
that
different type of chatos. It's that there it can still be a valid chatos even if you did it above the line. So the fact that you did this above the line doesn't prove anything about that it's an all. It could be that you were, you know, Uh, so the only thing that's relevant here is the thought of Shalom Lishma, your thought, because doing it above the line, even though that's the typical procedure for the Ola, but it's still a valid procedure for a Chatas.
listen, how do we know what this fellow's thinking? He puts it up in Ola and he says,
You
he
asked that three
originally,
times
the
already.
tag on it says Ola. So he's
Ken,
going to bring
Ken.
it up. He puts it and then he does an Ola. And then you're going to find, well, I was really thinking Chata. I mean, where do we get this? How do we know what he's thinking then? If he does, the bird says a tag on the bird, it says Ola. It brings it to the Beit HaMikdash, Ola. And then he does in the Ola place. Then you're going to examine what he was thinking. How do we know what he was thinking?
Well, this is the third time you've asked that
I
question.
know that. I still don't. I mean, it still sounds crazy. I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. I
You
could
have
have.
to, you rely on self-reporting, I guess, is the answer. Or maybe I'm supposing that if he verbalized it, to somebody else, maybe that is a way to know.
But why would he even do that if he wants it to be accepted? And everyone and he got the appearance, and the bird has a tag on Ola. He puts it. He goes up to the top of the line, does it there. Doesn't say anything, so it's accepted as an Ola, right?
Pretty sloppy, yeah. Um, yes,
No one
correct.
would know. No one would know. He
No,
doesn't say
no one would
anything.
know. No one
Then
would
it would be
know. Only he
accepted
would
as an
know.
Ola.
Only he would know, and he would have
Only
to
he and the
bear
Rabboni
that
alum.
burden. Yes, right. Yeah. No, listen, it's a good point, but clearly it's relying on the Kohen fessing up. Okay. Okay, next, so I mentioned before, there's going to be like six challenges to this idea of does the observable action override the lishmas? Here's the next case. Also, if you have a bird ola that you squeeze the blood above the line for a chatos, as a chatos of, it should work. So this is similar to what we said before. Before we said the malika, right? Now we're talking about the squeezing out of the blood. Okay, by doing it above the line, that does not prove that it's a bird ola, and it doesn't matter what you say you thought. You should have done the squeezing out of the blood below the line. Amre. So the answer, Dilma mitzvah de basar hazahi. Okay, because when people see that you're squeezing out the blood, remember there's two squeezings of the blood. There's the initial squeezing out, and then there's and the rest of the blood after you do the sprinkling, the rest of the blood you squeeze out on the mizbeach, and that could be anywhere above or below. Um, the squeezing of the leftover blood can be anywhere on the mizbeach. So the fact that you're seeing the squeezing of the blood above the line or below the line, that doesn't really help. That doesn't have any effect because people could be thinking, the observer could be thinking, oh, this is the second squeezing, and that can be anywhere. So it doesn't prove anything about his intentions. And we will stop here for today.
Sometimes you have
Lively
more
discussion.
questions. Sometimes you have more questions than answers.
That's for sure. Okay. All right. On this line of inquiry, we will continue tomorrow with Rip David. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay.